A road grader is working on the southern third of the runway here at the school, smoothing it out. There's a road grader smoothing out the southern 1/3 of the runway here. I think the runway was usable, this part of the runway was usable before, but it's much better now. So here is what we're going to cover with concrete. These tubes were put in the ground over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. But when these two tubes, when this was put in, for some reason they weren't put together. And there's a hole that like an airplane nose tire could fall in. That wouldn't be good to have your nose gear ripped off while going down the runway. There's the concrete poured and setting up. I just came out to throw some water on it so that it doesn't dry out too fast before it cures. And I had it covered with this tin. On the northern 1/3 of the runway, there was brush grown up on the runway that was about, in places, maybe 20 feet tall. And when I had gone down to Santa Cruz to work on the 182, I'd hired a local guy from the community a couple kilometers down the road from the school here to cut down all the brush on that part of the runway. We've been making, overall, some progress. There's been some setbacks that have delayed progress, and a lot of it is due to the weather. You just have to wait for days where it's dry enough to work. We've been working in the mud at the end of rainy season. The backhoe has a flat tire. The tire just went flat while it was parked here. I brought an air compressor out and it won't hold air. So here's the backhoe tire. I'm going to take it into town and to a tire repair shop. I broke a culvert that carries water underneath the runway from the uphill ditch to the downhill side of the runway, to the ditch on the downhill side of the runway. You can see it wasn't buried very deep here, so I need to replace these two culverts that I broke with the backhoe driving over it, and bring in a lot more fill dirt, bury it deeper so that it doesn't have so much weight sitting on top of it. One of the things I've been working a little bit on is the runway. Haven't been able to work on it too much the past couple months because it's been rainy season and you can see it's pretty wet. There's parts of the runway that need to be filled with dirt so that water doesn't stand on it. And down here is where a bulldozer worked for a couple hours. The owner of the local sawmill sent the bulldozer for free to work for a couple hours. However, the bulldozer filled in the ditch up on that part of the uphill side of that runway, so the water that's flowing down out of the jungle is flowing over the runway. And down in that area, the backhoe really can't work right at the moment because it's too muddy. And you can see right in this area, there's a lot of mud, and you have to pick your days. We can now mow the runway in about 4.5 hours, which that is a major advancement You can see these trees on the side of the runway need to be cleared away from the side of the runway on this side. So this is where the Samurai had a hard time pulling the trailer through. That's a pile of dirt that the road grader left there. It was dirt mixed with grass from when they graded this part of the runway. So once you get off, we're driving along the side of the runway so that we don't mess up the runway, but the part of the runway that's graded, and but that means we're driving through where the road grader left loose dirt, piles of loose dirt and grass, which is now in the rainy season just turned into a lot of mud. I was starting to put the culverts in the ditch to make a bridge so we could make it across the ditch with some equipment to make some progress. And I was going for this culvert here, and while picking the culvert up, the backhoe sunk in here. The backhoe has such small tires for its weight that any soft spot it gets stuck, and it normally can pull itself out, but this time it took a bit of digging and picking the backhoe up with itself and putting logs underneath it so that it wouldn't sink, and then it was able to pull itself out. The Samurai does fine. It's so lightweight it just runs around on top of all the mud. Over there where the road grader had piled up a bunch of loose dirt mixed with grass, I did have to unhook the trailer. The Samurai was having a hard time pulling the trailer through mud up to its axles, but without the trailer it does really well, and with the trailer you kind of just have to pick where you drive.